Hourglass. I was never a superstitious person, but that was before I found the hourglass. Before everything started to unravel. Now, I can't even look at the ticking of a clock without feeling the creeping sensation that time isn't what we think it is. It isn't a fixed path, no, time is a living thing, a thing that can be bent, and worse yet, a thing that can bite you when you're least expecting it. It started in the basement of my grandmother's house. A dusty, dark place I had avoided for years, mostly because of the strange things she'd whispered about it. She was old when I was a kid, always muttering nonsense about how the house had its own secrets, how time had once been broken in the family. She died when I was 18, and I had forgotten about the basement until that summer day, years later, when I needed something to distract myself from the grind of adult life. The air was thick with dust and the smell of old wood when I descended the narrow staircase. There, tucked away in a forgotten corner, I found it, an old, tarnished hourglass sitting on a wooden shelf. The glass was cracked, and the sand inside was more black than white. Something about it just felt wrong. Yet, curiosity tugged at me, and before I knew it, my hands were wrapped around its fragile frame, lifting it out of its dusty resting place. I didn't even realize at first that I had started playing with it. It was a moment of distraction, nothing more. I turned it over. The sand began to flow, slow and steady, though not in the way I would have expected. Instead of cascading like normal sand, it seemed to resist, almost like it was fighting to stay where it was. A strange thing to notice, yes, but at the time, I shrugged it off. It was later, when I was back in the living room, that I first noticed it happening. The clock on the wall stopped. I didn't hear the ticking anymore. For a few moments, I thought it was a power surge or something typical. But when I checked the time on my phone, it read the same. No movement at all. And then, the bizarre part. I felt the weight of the hourglass in my hand, and suddenly, I was back in the basement, standing in the exact same place where I had just been moments ago. The air was heavy, the dust settling in the same spot where it had been. I stared at the hourglass, confused, until it dawned on me, I had reverse time. But how? I hadn't moved. I hadn't done anything except turn over the sand. I thought I was imagining things. A trick of the light. But I wasn't. I checked the clock. It read the same time again, but now, I was sure something was off. The air in the house felt thicker, the walls closer. It felt like I had been here longer than I thought, but how? How could I explain the shift in my surroundings? For the next few days, I experimented with the hourglass. Each time I flipped it, I'd notice more changes. Time didn't just stop, it reset. A few minutes, an hour, a day, it was never the same. Sometimes, I could go back and fix a mistake, other times, it seemed to only make things worse. I made one simple change. I spoke to my old neighbor, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, and when I went back, I saw a window I hadn't noticed before. A window that shouldn't have been there. But what if I didn't want to change things? What if I was just trying to stop the inevitable? It didn't take long for me to realize that even though I was in control of time, time was not in control of me. Each time I turned the hourglass, something darker began to seep into my life. I started noticing people I knew acting strangely, like they weren't quite the same, as if they were somehow different after I flipped the sand. It was like I was erasing parts of them, or worse, changing them in ways I didn't even understand. I couldn't stop, though. The power of it, of reversing time, of taking back my mistakes, was too intoxicating. But it wasn't just mistakes I was trying to fix. I was trying to change the very course of my life, to undo regrets that had long haunted me. And with each turn, the darkness deepened. I hadn't even noticed it at first, but my reflection started to change. In the mirror, I saw myself looking older. Tired, worn down. Like the weight of my actions was starting to show on my face. And then there were the sounds. Whispers. Little voices I couldn't quite place, that felt like they were coming from all around me, pressing in from all sides. The house seemed to grow smaller, as if the walls were closing in, squeezing me into a corner I couldn't escape. The hourglass had become my obsession. My whole life revolved around it. But each time I turned it, I felt like I was losing more than just time. I was losing myself. The whispers grew louder, sharper. They didn't sound like voices at all, but more like the scraping of nails on glass. When I closed my eyes, I could almost feel the vibrations in my teeth. At first, I thought it was my imagination running wild, but then I realized something terrifying. These whispers weren't just in my head. They were in the house. And they were growing stronger with every flip of the hourglass. I tried to stop. I really did. I tried putting it back in the basement, burying it under old blankets and boxes, but it always called to me. It was as if the hourglass itself wanted to be found. The moment I picked it up again, I could feel the weight of the sand shifting within it, the pulse of something ancient and terrible beneath my fingertips. Then, one night, after flipping it yet again, something completely unexpected happened. The house went silent. I had gotten used to the whispers by now, but this silence was something else. It was thick and oppressive, pressing down on me like the air had suddenly turned to lead. The lights flickered and went out. I was left in the darkness, holding the hourglass, feeling the cold sand against my skin. In that moment, I realized the worst part of all. The hourglass wasn't just rewinding time, it was twisting it. The more I tried to control it, the more it controlled me. I could feel myself slipping, my body growing heavier, my mind clouded with thoughts that weren't mine. Strange, fragmented memories flooded my consciousness, some of them weren't even my own. I tried to stop flipping it, tried to put it back in the basement for good, but it was already too late. Each time I thought I could leave it behind, it called me back, a dark pull that couldn't be ignored. I was trapped in a cycle, a loop that I couldn't break. Every time I thought I had fixed something, every change I tried to make, I only created more chaos. And then, the last flip came. I can't tell you why I did it. I should have thrown the damn thing away, set it on fire, buried it under miles of dirt. But something inside me snapped, something primal and desperate to control what had become uncontrollable. I turned the hourglass, and in that instant, I felt a presence in the room with me. A heavy, oppressive shadow. The whispers turned into laughter. Not the light, innocent kind. No, this was dark. Twisted. A laugh that crawled beneath my skin, twisted my thoughts, and made my heart race with dread. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The air around me thickened, and I could feel the weight of the past pressing in from all sides. I saw things then, things I couldn't unsee. The walls of the house, they moved. Not physically, but in my mind. They shifted, warped, stretched like elastic, pulling me deeper into a space I couldn't escape from. It was as if the house itself had become a part of the hourglass, a vessel for time's dark force. I heard my grandmother's voice, faint, like a memory echoing through the darkness. Time doesn't forgive. It just waits. I didn't understand it then, but I did now. Time had been waiting for me all this time. Waiting for me to be foolish enough to turn the glass one last time. And now, it was taking everything back. Every moment, every decision, every person I'd tried to fix, it was all being erased, rewritten, lost in the folds of time. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed by the sheer horror of it all. Maybe it was seconds, maybe it was hours. All I knew was that when the laughter stopped, I was no longer in my grandmother's house. I was somewhere else. Somewhere darker. I wish I could tell you I found a way out, that I could have stopped the cycle. But the truth is, I don't even know if I'm still here, or if I've become another part of the house, another fragment of time lost to the sands of the hourglass. I can still feel it, the weight of it. The weight of the sand, of the past pressing down, of the time that's slipping through my fingers like it's never been mine to control. And when I close my eyes, I hear it again, that laugh, that creeping whisper, telling me that there's no escaping. Time has become my enemy. And I think it always was. It's strange, you know. To be caught in something so intangible, yet so utterly consuming. Like walking through a fog so thick it feels like you're moving through molasses, but every step you take only leads you deeper into the haze. You know you're going somewhere, but you can't tell where, and the longer you stay in it, the more your mind starts to unravel. Time was the fog, and I had become lost in it. The silence that followed that last flip of the hourglass was deafening. I thought maybe it was over, that the house, or whatever force it was that had twisted reality around me, had finally let me go. But I was wrong. Oh, so wrong. When I came to, I found myself lying on the floor of the basement. The hourglass, that cursed thing, was still in my hands, its sand slowly sifting down, as if time was trying to tell me something. I didn't know how I got there. One moment, I was in the living room, holding the glass, and the next, darkness. Absolute silence. Then, a low creak from upstairs, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps. I didn't want to look. I couldn't look. The idea of seeing someone, or something, coming down the stairs made my heart race, but the pull of curiosity, that dark force of wanting to know what was happening, pushed me. I couldn't fight it. The footsteps grew louder, closer. Each thump seemed to echo through my skull, vibrating in my bones. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My throat was tight, and all I could do was wait. It was her. My grandmother. But she wasn't the same. Not anymore. Her face, once warm and wrinkled with age, was now distorted, stretched, as though time itself had wrung her out like a cloth and left behind only the remnants of a person. Her eyes were wide, hollow, black holes. Her mouth, twisted into a grin that stretched too far, farther than a human mouth could ever go, revealed rows of teeth that were not human at all. Sharp, jagged, almost alien. And then she spoke. Or rather, it spoke. You should have listened, boy. The voice that came from her mouth was not hers. It was low, raspy, like 100 whispers layered over each other. You think you can change time? You think you can control it? Time is not yours to play with. I backed up, stumbling as I tried to crawl away, the hourglass still gripped tightly in my hands. It was all I had left. All that remained of the world I once knew. But as I moved, the floor beneath me seemed to warp. The cracks in the wood began to widen, stretching into deep, black voids. I could feel the house shifting around me, the walls breathing, the air growing heavier. And then, just like before, the ground gave way. I fell, but this time I didn't land on solid earth. I landed in something other. A place that was familiar, but wrong. A place out of time. I can't explain it, it's impossible to explain, really. It was like being suspended between worlds, between moments, between memories. The hourglass in my hands, with its sand that never seemed to end, was the only thing that anchored me to anything resembling reality. But it was no use. The longer I held it, the more everything slipped away. And in that dark place, I could feel the presence again, the thing that had been whispering to me, guiding me, playing with me. It was like I was becoming part of the machine, a cog in the wheel of time that was grinding me down, piece by piece. My grandmother, or what was left of her, was nowhere to be seen, but I could feel her eyes on me. Everywhere. Always watching. I don't know how long I stayed there, in that limbo between worlds. Time, or whatever it was, no longer had meaning. There were no clocks. No sun. No moon. Only the sand. The endless, suffocating sand. Eventually, the sand began to shift again, slower this time, heavier. The hourglass felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I had thought I could change things, fix the mistakes I had made, undo the damage. But I had only made it worse. The longer I kept flipping it, the tighter the grip of time became on me. Every second that passed felt like 100 years. Every breath felt like the last. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, the whispers returned. This time, they were no longer just whispers. They were voices. Loud. Clear. Multiple voices, speaking all at once, overlapping, filling my ears with words I couldn't understand. I couldn't move. I couldn't escape. And that's when it hit me, there was no escaping it. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how many times I turned the hourglass, no matter what I did, I could never fix it. Time was a force that could not be tamed, could not be controlled. It would always find its way. Always. As I lay there, the last of my strength slipping away with the sand, I realized something else. It wasn't just the house that was changing. It was me. I wasn't even sure who I was anymore. I don't know if I'll ever get out. I don't know if there's anyone left who even remembers me, who could help me. All I know is that the hourglass is still here, always here, and every time I close my eyes, I can hear the sand, feel it, shifting through my fingers, reminding me of everything I've lost. Time is never forgiving. And now, it's my enemy.